G'day guys and gal. As we know, the Emperor took an absolute beating in his fight with Horus. His mind, body and spirit were broken, many of his aspects which make up parts of him were killed, and he all round had a pretty bad time. Horus was more powerful and the Emperor only really won due to help from his buddies, a bit of luck, and a shitload of metaphorical dick punches. Dude fought dirty. By the end of it, he was basically a corpse, getting brought to the Golden Throne to sustain his life while keeping the Astronomicon working and the Webway Gate on Terra closed. This suspended him in a state of undeath, where his body more or less withered, but his shattered soul was allowed to amass power. However, what if he low-diffed Horus and walked away from the fight unscathed? How would that affect the setting? Could we get an Imperium Ascendant, or would it more or less inevitably follow the same trajectory as canon? Before we get started, you guys have been amazing with the Big E launch. It shattered all expectations, thank you so much for that. I'm also happy to announce that we're now in week 2 of the launch, which means you can access your Big E V2 for free. You no longer need to be a DICE member or Big E V1 purchaser, although you'll still get discounts if you're either one of those. If you're on our mailing list, you should have gotten an email on how to access the Big E V2. However, if not, that's fine. Just follow the link below and punch in your details and bam, instant access, baby. We have the tabletop scale for all your wargaming needs, the art scale for those that just want to paint and even submit their Big E into a competition. Then there is the epic 112 scale, showing off all the details, and then there is the legendary 1/6 scale, which I'm not even sure you could call it a miniature anymore. This year, we are also offering a pre-painted Big E option, so you can get your man assembled, painted, and varnished to a pro standard. The Big E V2 is a huge improvement over V1, including 3 new helmet variants, better proportions, much better resin, awesome new details, and more. It's better in every way and is only available until the end of the month. 112 scale and 1/6 scale, as well as pre-painted, are also limited, with over half of them being sold already. We'll also be shipping Big E's first come first serve, so it's better not to wait. On top of that, we've also opened a lot of slots for our awesome pre-painted Surface. We can get a Major Mini pre-painted and sent to your doorstep. You can even get both a Big E, a Major Mini, and a pre-painted Major Mini, all in one order. So many options, link is below. Today we'll go over what if the Emperor actually dumpstered Horus in their fateful duel and was able to walk away more or less unscathed. Now let's get into it. You may be wondering why I'm able to make what ifs as if they were actually gospel and not just fanfics, and that really just comes from knowing a shitload of 40k lore. I have read the entire Horus Heresy, including all short stories, while also having spent thousands of hours reading excerpts, Lex entries, and making over 1,000 videos. I know more about 40k lore than most of the workers at Games Workshop. There will literally be people who try to call me out for an online lore mistake, which to be fair I did make a few of those like 5 years ago, only for their correction to actually be wrong and my original claims to still be correct. So I feel pretty fucking qualified. Anyway, let's have a look. So I won't spend too much time recapping the fight itself. I made a video about the fight last week, but basically the Emperor got fucked on hard. His aspects were killed, his spirit broken, and his body brutalized. It was only sheer force of will that kept him on his feet long enough to kill Horus, and as soon as the deed was done, the Emperor collapsed to the floor, unresponsive and barely alive. Rogaldorn, Valdor, and the Blood Angels rushed in and quickly teleported themselves, Sanguinius' corpse, and the Emperor to the palace, where the Emperor was placed on the Golden Throne. His servants thought it would regenerate him, however the Golden Throne was just as much of a pain engine than it was a life support system. Thus the Emperor would never again step off the throne, enduring 10,000 years of torment as his already broken psyche was shattered further. Sure, he could still impact the setting and did so in many ways, but he could no longer speak, move, or issue direct commands. The closest we have to the Emperor being coherent is the dreams he sends some of his custodians, as well as the occasional time he will punch a Chaos God in the face for being too uppity. The Emperor being a bit of a skeletal lithium battery meant others had to manage the day-to-day of the Imperium, which ended up causing the Imperial truth to fail, the Imperial cult to dominate, and corruption and superstition to infect every level of the Imperium. But what if the Emperor fucked up Horus good and was able to walk away fine? Let's set the scene. The Emperor faces Horus, but not as the King of Ages. Instead, he somehow manages to gain mastery of the Dark King, if only for a short while, and use it to empower himself without giving himself fully over and becoming the 5th Chaos God. He and Horus battle. The fight itself is still legendary, but the Emperor now isn't the weaker one, constantly on the back foot. He is dominant. Horus puts up a mighty fight, but is eventually slain when Alanis arrives and gives the Emperor the stone knife, the only thing that appears capable of killing Horus. Horus is slain, not by an Emperor clinging to life by sheer will, but by a radiant demigod. As soon as Horus dies, the Emperor dispels the last of the Dark King from himself, returning to his still powerful but more stable King of Ages aspect. In this version, Alanis' person isn't killed by Horus, as the Emperor didn't need to have a timeout like he did in canon. Likewise, let's say Garviel Loken doesn't stay behind and get killed by Erebus, as either the Emperor makes Garviel come with him him when they leave the vengeful spirit, or the Emperor brings Horus's corpse back to the palace with them. So not only are we saving the Emperor, but Alanis and Loken as well, two paragons of nobility who would be essential in keeping the Imperium spirit pure. Does this lead to Imperium Ascendant, the Emperor off the throne and leading mankind into a new golden age? Well, not necessarily. So the Emperor still needs to sit upon the golden throne. It is unstable, is keeping the webway gate shut, and is directing the Astronomicon. There are various stages of the Emperor's relationship with the throne over the years. During the Great Crusade, the throne was stable and was only being used to direct the Astronomicon. The Emperor could link with it light years away and could direct it despite fighting battles on the other side of the galaxy. Then he needed to sit upon it to help open up the webway for mankind's use. This was difficult but not overly taxing. In this context, he was using the throne as a power-up. However, when the webway was breached and the heresy started, this is where shit started to suck. The throne was used to desperately try to save the webway project, and when that failed, keep the webway gate on Terra sealed. If the Emperor left the throne now, the webway gate would rip open and demons would flood Terra. As the heresy continued and the siege of Terra began, Horus and the Chaos Gods put a ton of pressure on the Emperor. The Emperor was keeping the Astronomicon alive, was holding back chaos, was psychically dueling with Horus, and was keeping the webway gate closed, all simultaneously. This is when he appeared on the throne as an old man in pain, or appeared in the warp as a dehydrated man on the brink of death. He was under a lot of stress. However, he was still quite coherent. He could directly communicate with people, either psychically or via his aspects. He could also occasionally get up and do stuff if the throne had 1,000 or so psychers ready to burn, but overall he was having a really shitty time. He was so focused on all of these duties that he very rarely spoke to any of his sons. The focus required to do so was too much, and a slip in concentration could have terrible results. Then of course there is the corpse Emperor on the throne side of things. He no longer has to worry about his physical body as it withers away and his soul grows in power. Ironically, this actually appears to be the most stable form of the Emperor on the throne. So the question is more so, what if the Emperor sat on the golden throne at the end of the heresy at full health rather than as a literal dead body? Well, there would be less pressure on him overall. No more Horus, no more chaos at the gates. However, the Astronomicon would still need to be directed and the webway gate held closed. In theory, the Emperor could have stabilized things further if he had another powerful psyker by his side, but with Malkador dead and Magnus forever lost, this wasn't an option. The whole point behind the risky gambit to try and bring Magnus back to the Loyalist side during the Siege of Terra was specifically so he could stabilize the throne with the Emperor and allow the Emperor to take the field directly. That's why it was such a desperate move. If it worked, it would have changed the outcome of the heresy. But even in this nicer version of events, there is no Malkador or Magnus, so the Emperor would immediately sit on the golden throne, putting almost all of his focus into keeping things stable. Now, I don't think this goes the exact same way as canon. Sure, he is stuck on the throne, but I don't think he'll just wither away, especially as the Imperium now has breathing room to fortify the throne room, putting in sophisticated psychic machinery to support the Emperor, even still bringing in some psychers to sacrifice to him as fuel, although it would be notably less. The Emperor would also have a much easier time speaking to people when he needed to, and may even be able to send one of his aspects, like Revelation, to rule the Imperium in his stead. The Imperial cult would still spread, but it would be significantly less corrupt and fucked up, as the Emperor would have a greater degree of control over the Imperium. Rogel, Valdor, and others like Guilliman would immediately begin searching for ways to get the Emperor off the throne. However, like in canon, I believe the Emperor would reject and even sabotage these attempts. After all, the Terminus Decree, the instructions telling the Grey Knights to never allow the Emperor to leave the throne, and if he did, to put him back on it, was written before the Emperor faced off against Horus. The Emperor might end up in a corpse-like state anyway. Sure, the first few years, centuries, or even millennia he may be stable and somewhat conscious, but after 5 or 10,000 years of constant pain and effort, his body could degrade regardless. It almost seems like allowing his body to wither made him a lot more powerful in the warp, as he could focus entirely on the warp. So what actually changes? Not as much as you would think, but still some. The Emperor would be a lot more present for a decent while, allowing to more directly lead and guide the Imperium. Alongside that, Garviel and Alanis both being present would mean there would be a lot more morality and less corruption would occur. Valdor wouldn't vanish, the Khan and Lehman likely wouldn't either. The odds of Guilliman, Dawn, and the other loyalists all dying or vanishing is also less likely, at least initially. Basically, the new Imperium would be given stronger foundations, and a lot of fuckery that occurred in canon wouldn't in this new timeline. Perhaps the fall of Cody would never happen, as a better equipped Imperium may have handled the containment of the Eye of Terror better. Maybe there would be a lot less corruption in general, as the Emperor can safeguard his people better. Maybe the Imperial cult ends up doing a lot more good, as its efforts are directed by the Emperor himself. Either way, the Emperor would be in overall a much better position than it is in canon. However, the reality is, as soon as the Webway project failed, humanity was fucked. Everything after that was just determining how fucked humanity would be. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then pick up the big EV2. All you gotta do is check your emails or punch in your details and you'll be ready to go. Hit the subscribe button, hit the real subscribe button for more golden content. Join the Discord for more memes and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Go!